Welcome back, my friends, to episode 10 of Beyond Bricks and Mortar. What a milestone. We've reached 10 episodes. It feels like it went by incredibly fast. And I'm really happy that today's guest is the guest for episode 10 for this milestone. Today, I'm joined by Mallory Bogard, the other half, arguably the better half, sorry, Brandon, of the Bogard team at Sirhan. Now, if you recall, about 7 weeks ago, I had Brandon Bogard, Mallory's husband, on the podcast, and we went deep on business, on marriage, on working with your spouse. But today I'm joined by Mallory, who has a similar take and approach with certain things, but certainly a different approach and take with others. Just like my episode with Brandon, we go deep here on what it really is like to work with your spouse. What are some of the important things you need to know if you're going into business with your spouse? How you can empower each other to succeed on a day-to-day basis. But we also talked about the powerful and unique advantage that women have in the selling homes business. This was an extensive conversation, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. If you're new here, welcome. You picked a great episode to start with. Please remember to like and subscribe, and new episodes of Beyond Bricks and Mortar are every single Wednesday. So now, my friends, without further ado, wow, I sounded a little too Lex Friedman there, like my dear friends. Here she is, Mallory Bogard. But I appreciate these books. Thank you. This is very sweet. And I love this, Who Run the World, an ABC book of inspirational women who run the world. This is very appropriate for this podcast, I must say, because I have questions that relate to this.
Oh, good.
But I love this, and my wife is going to love this.
Yeah.
Love this.
They're really cute.
Raised on Hip Hop coloring book. This is fantastic.
They're so cute.
I love that. Thank you. It's very thoughtful of you to come with a gift. I appreciate that.
It's my gift for you, letting me come on.
No, I'm so happy to have you. How's your day going?
It's good. As my life has become over the last, especially year, I deal with developers like pretty much all day.
Yeah, and you're busy.
Yes, and today has been extensive meetings with developers. So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It seems like you guys just keep getting busier and busier and busier. When Brandon was here, he told me that you guys had 50 listings.
Yeah.
Where are you at right now?
So we have 30 on the market.
Wow.
I think technically 28 because we had a lot of closings last week. But we have off-market shadow listings in the buildings. So technically, I think we're hovering right around the early 50s.
Wow. You guys are really killing it.
Yeah,
I love it.
We're about to launch a 5-unit building in Williamsburg, and we're about to launch a $6 million house in Carroll Gardens.
Wow. And Brooklyn has really become your territory.
Yeah, we are like... I feel like Brandon kind of oversees the Manhattan business a little bit more, but like Brooklyn to me.
That's your hood.
Yeah.
I love that.
I can talk to anybody about any real estate in Brooklyn and feel like excited and confident. And you can I think if you ask me about real estate downtown, I love real estate downtown, but it's not the same fire, I think, as when I talk about Brooklyn.
I hear that. I'm actually kind of the opposite. I much prefer to be selling on the Upper East Side. Mm-hmm. You know, everything like that hovers around Central Park feels like, home for me.
That's your zone.
Yeah, that's my zone. I've done business all over the city. I've done a lot of business in Brooklyn. I certainly can't very comfortably talk about the Brooklyn markets the way I can in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's it's quite a contrast, you and I sitting at the other side of this table.
Together, we got it all covered.
Oh, well, let's jump right in, especially off the heels of you bringing these books, which I really appreciate it. But let me ask you this, just to get started. Historically, when you look back at this industry and the job of selling real estate, the data and the evidence will show that women have made up the bulk of the industry's top real estate agents. Examples in no particular order: Dolly Lenz, Barbara Corcoran, Serena Boardman, Dottie Herman, Faith Hope Consolo, Mallory Bogard, Carrie Chang. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is this: why do you think that's the case? And what gives women a unique advantage in real estate?
Yeah. Going in deep at the beginning.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So I think it's worth probably noting that Brandon had been in real estate for a decade before I joined him in real estate. I came from another industry. And whenever
How does it feel to already be better than him at real estate?
Love that. No, he's amazing. But he definitely has like a certain skill set. And I say all the time, our skill sets blend so well together. We could not have painted this potion, put this potion together in a science lab of how well our skill sets mold together. But I do think my feminine touch on things definitely helped bring him and us both into the next level. And so I started in real estate with him 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was in between. I was facing a life change, right? I got laid off from my job. I was looking at starting my own business, and I was just trying to figure out what life looked like. But I said, I'm going to go help him with real estate. I'll help him. I'm business background. So I was like, I'll go in and help him get organized and set up a CRM and do all these things and look at his return on investments, because he didn't do any of that. And I'll put some Excel charts together for him, whatever. And I get in, I get my license. I'm thinking I'm just going to help him kind of with his business. And then I was like, he has all these really great ideas, right? He has really big picture, great ideas. He's amazing with people. I call him kind of like the hunter. He really knows how to go out and procure new relationships with people. And then wasn't necessarily seeing them through. There was I'm going out and hunting, but it's really hard to hunt. And then also in this sense, I'm going to call bringing the animals home to me, who's now taking care of them.
The actual execution of it.
Yes. The execution is so important. And I think women tend to follow through on execution. From what I see in real estate, women just, our experiences are based on the averages, right? And so if I, on average, ask somebody on the other side of a deal to send me something, and it's 50-50 if they do or not, and it feels like that can be weighted a little bit, women follow through on actually sending that to me a little bit more often. I'm not this doesn't apply to everybody, but there's definitely a level of execution that I think I hope to bring to the table. That's a really great idea. Now, how can we put it into action and do it? Let's do it.
I hear that. I mean, my wife is a lot more organized than I am. And she's also a lot more all in with things than I am. When she does something, even if it's a health routine or anything she has in mind, she's very much all in or nothing. Yeah. And she does it all the way. I'm kind of not as much like that. My discipline is not quite as tapered as hers is.
I came from the watch industry, and I really noticed then too, so not just in real estate, but it was a lot of men at the top, and there was a lot of women right under them. And it was the women that were, a lot of them my mentors. And I was like, what is it that gets the men into these top level positions above the women? And I was just always very intrigued by it. And I felt the women were just they were getting things done, and the men were able to speak to big vision though in a room and sway people, and they had influence, and the influence is what kind of got them into the upper level positions, but they still needed the women in order to execute everything. Yeah. So
do you think that that's still the case, that men have a more commanding influence? I don't know that I necessarily feel that way.
I don't feel that way in real estate. I think there's just such strong humans, especially in New York City. All the real estate agents are just they're so business centric, and they're good business people. I cringe when somebody calls us a realtor. I'm we're not.
I hate that word. I hate the word broker. I hate it.
Yeah.
People ask me what I do for a living. I tell them I sell homes. Yeah. I never say I'm a real estate agent or I'm a real estate broker. There's a stigma that comes with saying those words.
Yes.
Because immediately the conversation becomes oh, now he's going to try to get business out of me,
Yeah, but it's the opposite to me. I don't even want to tell people what I do, because then they're going to think that, right?
Right.
And so I don't even want to tell them. But I think those words kind of dumb down what we do, and no one really understands how much there is to running a real estate business, which is what I prefer to call it.
Yeah.
We are I work for these huge corporate companies that had all of these different people over all of these different departments, and we are all of that in one when you're running a real estate business. Yes. We're the CEO, we're the CTO, we're the head of HR, of marketing, of advertising, of client retention, of new client acquisition. We're literally over all of
the first line of defense and the last one.
Yes. And then people are like, oh, you're a realtor. I'm like, oh no, I'm not a realtor.
I know. Yeah, like even the other day I was in the gym and the trainer asked me, he's like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I sell homes. And he goes, so you're a real estate agent? Yep.
Pretty much.
Yep.
But it's just so much more than that, as you know.
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you have been faced with as a woman in business?
I think that I'm in a very special situation where I get to see the way people react to a man that has the exact same opinion that I have about a specific topic, and the way I say it and the way he says it, and him getting more people on board. He is by nature an influencer, and maybe that's him as a human being, but I think it's definitely very, very obvious to me when we're with a third person. It's like people don't want to go against him. Like they just like he gets
commands
sway.
A presence.
He does, and I love that about him, and it's so important in business. It's like so helpful. But I think that me sometimes as a woman, I don't know. I see people kind of breeze over my suggestion and then him say the exact same thing and get a different response.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah, I hear that.
Maybe it's me.
Well, you guys are really like, you guys as a pair are very, very powerful. And I said the same thing to Brandon when we were together. Like there's a dynamic there that's like, whoa, like you could see it. It really, and it radiates in the content that you guys have. It radiates when you guys walk into a room together and like Brandon's wearing some kind of like crazy furry jacket and, and you're standing right there next to him. Like,
just, you know. Yeah, I think it's been really fun to build this, like our brand. Part of me almost even feels missing when I'm not with him, but we do have to divide and conquer most days. So we're not like by each other's side all of the time, but building us as a brand has been just like probably one of the most special things I've ever done in my career and my adulthood. And he's made that really easy because he's like such a brand himself. But yeah, like building us together has been one of the greatest things, and we're definitely not slowing down. But yeah, we have a system now, and it took a couple of years for us to figure out everything about the other person, where their opinions lie. There's some things that you kind of change after you work with somebody for a couple of years. Now we're in year 6, I think. Yeah. And we're really, I think, the machine's running well, and it shows in our business. And
it's like now you've reached a point where you're really complementing each other. You're really complementing each other's strengths. You're filling in the blanks on each other's weaknesses. So it's really like that's an unbreakable partnership.
It's unbreakable.
You know, that's really amazing.
It truly is. And I don't know how it would be. I've never had a business partner that wasn't my spouse, unless you count the fact that, you know, we were engaged and boyfriend, girlfriend also while we were business partners. But anyway, I just can't imagine there's a level of being able to hash things out really quickly. Yeah. Like we have a disagreement. Usually we decide who needs to make the decision and move on quickly. And that's how we're able to move fast. And in our everyday, we have to move fast or you can't get stuck on something. Right. But being able to just tackle it, and we'll be in front of people. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, I thought we were doing something different. You just said the opposite of what we had agreed to. What's up with that? We have to handle it within the first 60 seconds.
Yeah, address it immediately.
And then move on. And there's no like, I'll talk to you about that later. We don't do that.
At all. Yeah, and that's almost like that's marriage advice more than business advice. Yeah. You know, it's like address it immediately. Don't go to bed angry. Yeah. You know, those are cliches for a reason.
Yeah, they are. I think that, you know, my relationships in the past, I don't think I ever could have ran a business with a previous partner, because his and our ability to make decisions and trust each other is just like, it's so there. Yeah. And you have to have that if you're running a business too.
Yeah. So you spent over a decade in the watch business. You were selling watches to the wealthy. How has that experience during that time helped you become a successful real estate agent? I'm sorry, I don't want to say real estate agent. But
that's okay. We got to shorten it up somehow, and which is technically what people do. So I was at a company in Dallas for the first half of my watch career, and I was, among other things, I ended up working with the brands. So we had the licensing for brands like DKNY, Michael Kors, Marc Jacobs, that had a mother office in New York City, but then licensed Fossil to make their fashion watches.
Oh, okay.
And then you would end up, so we had like 12 licensed brands under the same roof. And the designer of one was sitting next to the designer of another. And it was, there was a lot of like, I would say like brand story overlap. And there had to be a layer of, hey, this brand is doing this story and using this watch strap color, like whatever. So it was defining the stories of the season for different brands and then helping communicate that to the rest of the company and external sales teams. And then building on that, I moved to New York to work with another watch company, and I helped launch a New York-based watch brand in countries around the world. And I think that besides just getting business skills in general for a good decade, I think being able to understand brands and why some brands are successful and why they're not, and how to have brand DNA, but also open in another country that the brand's never been before, while listening to their local needs, but also upholding your brand DNA. It's literally what we do in everything in real estate.
Makes you a good storyteller.
Makes you a good storyteller, and I think it helps you communicate the brand of a home to people who come to see it. It helps you communicate your own brand to people you want to work with you, buyers and sellers, and really, like, if you think about it, like everything we do is like communication based anyway. And I had communication on steroids pretty much my first 10 years.
Especially in residential real estate, because it's such an emotional business that how you communicate, the manner in which you communicate, all that stuff is so important.
So important. We were literally refining communication every day. I have to make sure everyone understands the gravity. Everyone on my team understands the gravity of everything that we communicate every day. How we take care of clients is really communication based, because it's setting expectations, educating, keeping like people in the loop. You know, when we get brought on as the second broker, it's almost always the complaints from the first broker are communication based. I'm
the same. About 90% of my business over the years has been round two. It's repositioning property. That's always really been my niche. And a lot of the time communication is a big factor. That's why regularly updating the client in a very structured way on a weekly basis. That's stuff that I find clients really, really tend to appreciate when they've already gone through one round with another agent.
Yes.
And
it's been really nice, because it's how I've been able to develop such deep developer relationships too, because I start working with a developer who's done other projects with other people, not necessarily takeovers. We don't usually do takeovers, but we're okay with doing them, but we just don't usually. We're usually the first broker on a building. But they've worked with other brokers at other buildings, and they are all the same. Like, we're getting a completely different experience with you in the most positive way. And that's why all of our developer clients are sign up with us for their next projects, and we've never lost a developer, which is, I think, one of the most special parts when I look at my portfolio book right now, is just how many people are returning to us for their next project.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like I've learned a tremendous amount jumping onto 200 Amsterdam. We took over this project from another company. There's 112 units in the building. They gave us the last 17.
Yeah.
And, it begs the question, why would they make a switch at this stage in the game? Really, it's the top tier of inventory that's left, the penthouses, the full floors, the last remaining 5 bedrooms. Yeah. So for me, jumping onto that project, I feel like I've always been a good communicator with my clients, but this was another level, daily reporting.
I was going to ask you that, actually.
Daily reporting followed by weekly reporting, a regularly scheduled meeting with the developer every single week.
That's a lot.
It's a lot for sure. It's not in a bad way, but it's like, wow, this is really what this game is. Yeah. It's like a very different game than resale in nature and how it's structured, the disciplines that surround it. You're working on 17 homes, each of them, the developer needs to be kept in the loop as to what's going on with each and every one of them.
Yeah, they just want to. It's their baby. And there's definitely an element of this is my project. I've seen it from the ground up, and now we've been involved with a lot of projects from ground up from the day they buy the lot. This townhouse we're about to bring to market, we were there from the day they closed,
advising on every element.
And I think that when you're there from the very beginning like that too, you really see how how attached they are. Everything that was done was a decision at some point,
right?
And so the decision maker is going to be pretty attached to the project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And financially attached.
Yeah, in most ways, there's, I mean, like in the case of 200 Amsterdam, like with the last 17 units, I mean, their debt is already paid off on the project. At this point, it's just about grabbing the last remaining equity, squeezing out. But it's 17 units is about 275 million in inventory. It's still, it's a big chunk left over. So, and also developers are, they're not like home sellers. Mm-hmm. They're very, very disciplined, and they're really on it with the numbers, and the expectation that they have of you is different than your everyday home seller, where you're sort of like managing their emotions through the process. They're about to say goodbye to their home, or they're about to enter into a new one. So it's just a very, very different game. I've enjoyed so much like the learning process of it. I feel like I've sold in a lot of new developments before, but I've never been on the listing side, like representing the project itself. It's fun. So it's fun. It's a different game, but it's really where a lot of the power lies in this business when you're holding that kind of inventory.
I think too, just, I know. I love new development. We're about to launch something in March that we've been working on for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, the time commitment at this point, and one of these hasn't even hit the market yet, right? We're going to be hitting the market in about probably 6 or 7 weeks. And it's like you get really attached to it. And I think being attached to new development, you get attached to having like ties, like deep roots in a neighborhood. You get attached to meeting buyers, shoppers that are looking for a new home. Mm-hmm. You get just really like into the whole process. And I think once you get a taste of it, it's hard. Well, I don't know, maybe I'll have a different experience, but I love it. Yeah. I love it.
No, I'm loving it
so
as well.
Much.
Yeah, it's also nice to like be part of a project where the inventory is as beautiful as it is.
Yeah.
So
we've had to get to where we are now in new development, we've had to do projects we wouldn't necessarily even take on now.
Yeah.
Just because
the inventory is a tough sell in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And we still do sell things in tough locations. I would say we have like an angle of being able to make something elevated no matter where its location is, whether it's on a busy street, whether it's maybe a less, like maybe in an area there's not really any condo buildings. We have a couple of those that we're selling right now. Like there's houses,
someone out there for everything.
Yeah. And then like spearheading the initiative to like take care of this for somebody is really special to me. And usually like they have partners, they have people that are putting pressure on them to get a return, a strong yield, and then the pressure is coming from multiple people to them that comes to us. And I have just like I feel like I've dealt with a lot of different types of personalities and developers now. And I feel like I can handle anything. I say that. We'll see what comes out next. But
you guys can.
I get them. Like I get them now. And I'm confident. I think that the more you do anything, the more confidence you have, the easier it is to handle people, because you're a guide. You're their source of education, information. You know what you're doing, and you're the person that's going to tell them how to get things done.
Of course. And like, we're always going to run into new cases of things, like no two deals are alike and no two clients are alike. But there is a certain point where you feel like you've developed a rhythm and you just know how to handle whatever the situation is that develops along the way.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. How do you think both yours and Brandon's lives would look right now if you never entered into real estate? Has real estate strengthened the course of your marriage, or has it deterred you from growth as a couple?
We talk about this all the time. We just could not imagine our lives different than they are right now. I imagine I would have stayed probably either in the watch industry or accessories. I was really had my heart set on starting my own brand, and I had like a whole deck. I was like gonna
so that becomes the question, like if that was the case, what would your marriage look like today, you think?
I think that I do think we would be married, but we're like, oh my God, it's so hard to explain, but like building something together, like nobody can break us. Like I really do feel unbreakable. I know that there's other people that have built things and it not worked out, but I feel like for Brandon and I feel unbreakable. I think it's so much further than love of my life, soulmate, best friend. It's further than that.
Yes.
We went from nothing, okay? Like nothing. I got laid off. I had to Airbnb my apartment when you could still, I was renting, but I Airbnb'd. I moved in with him whenever I was starting my brand. I was looking at how I was going to fund my brand. And he had an okay real estate business. You know, he was selling a few apartments a year. He was like right before me, he was a single guy, just, you know, taking care of himself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Paying his expenses
That
were minimal.
Yes. And he was living in a studio, and I moved in with him when I got laid off. And we went through this period of time where right when I started in real estate, it was just like we had no money. We didn't. And I had, you know, always could have called my parents if I really got to a point where I felt like I needed it. But I was like, I'm going to make this work. I don't want to ask for help. I was also like a little older, that I felt like I was too old to be in that position. But I hope nobody ever feels like that, because there's just no like age limit on like changing careers and going and chasing your dreams and wanting to build something really big.
Yeah, I feel like it's never too late to start the thing that you want to do.
Yeah. And we were at a time where I started selling real estate, and we were really, both of us, investing all of what we were making back into our business, like trying lead sources, trying different things, doing marketing, doing postcards. Like anytime we closed something, we were like over half was going back into our business.
Yeah.
And we were like liquid low, you know, in those first couple of years. And we just like knew we were building something really big. But now to be at the place that we're at right now, which was, you know, we had a record breaking year last year. With pending, we hit 100 million, but we were at 80 with closed. And we had a $20 million, or like $21 million January. And we are on track to have another $20 million month this month. And we're just
Hell
like, yes, it's like we always knew, but to go on that journey together, it's like, it's unexplained. It's like, really don't even have words for it.
I love it. Let me ask you this. I asked a similar question to Brandon, but I think like the context is different.
Yeah.
Sitting with a woman. So what advice would you give to someone who's looking to consider entering into business with their spouse?
Yeah.
And would the advice differ if you were giving it to a man versus a woman? Like, what would you tell my wife?
Such a good question. I think that also from my perspective, I was coming into a world he knew that I didn't know.
Yes.
So I needed to learn real estate. And I think I brought skill sets that he didn't have, though, just from having a business background. And I had helped big businesses grow bigger. And he knew I was bringing that skill set in. But I think that you have to give each other a grace period of at least, I really feel like a year and a half to
let the other person learn and adjust.
Let the other person
settle into it.
Yeah. And if you're both coming in from the same industry, like if your wife was already in real estate, it might be a little bit different. But if one's coming into something new, giving them time to marinate and really understand the ins and outs of what this business entails. And then after about a year, you can start layering in, you know, more of their ideas, because now they're getting used to it. I would say that the new person, let yourself be a sponge, take in everything that you can, hold back on what you think is right, because you have to get experience in anything. Yeah. You need time to have experience, year and a half, really 2 years. Then you start figuring out how to do this together, and you figure out that's when you start really figuring out who's good at what, because now you're starting to, you know, break ground. Like I came in, I was down here. Like you gotta get experience so I can get closer to him.
Now you're like...
where am I now? So I'm just kidding. But as you get closer, then you can really identify each other's skills.
Fast forward this part.
Brandon, go to the other room. Leave your phone right where it is. No, but he I think that after letting the person get settled in, then you can start adding in their ideas and opinions and collaborating on things in a more, like a bigger way. Like it's so fun. Like I think of so many stories, but when I was like 6 months in, he was going on a pitch that he really wanted. And at the time, a $2 million listing for us was big.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a $2 million pitch, and I was like, I have to go with you. He's like, no, I can't. I can't. You'll mess up my flow. And I was like, but how will I learn if I don't go with you? And he was like, but it's important. And I was like, but it's important for the long-term growth for me to go. And he was like, you're right. And he started taking me on pitches. And I was quiet. You know, I was like observing, I was taking notes. I had the pitch book. I'd like show them the comps, whatever. It's probably silly. But I think you've got to add them in to have the full experience. Yeah, you have to bring them into the fold. And me being able to fast forward in some parts of the business was instrumental, you know, in me being able to pick it up as fast as I did. Year one was slow, but year two I had made 6 figures. And I think for real estate, that's not super common, but I was just like, not. Let's
especially not for year two.
Year two,
you know?
Yeah.
Of course, like you had like, you know, a mentor that you were intertwined with, so that helped accelerate your success a bit. But still, like
I worked his open houses. I mean, that's a huge door opener that I was able to. So I was able to have conversations with consumers of real estate in a significant way just by working his listings. Yeah. And that's really how I got started.
Well, what advice, like on the other side of the coin, like what would you say to my wife? Because what you just said, the advice you just said, like you said, let the other person, you know, settle in, give it time to marinate. But that's advice for me.
Yeah, that would be advice for you.
So what advice would you give my wife who's potentially considering entering into real estate and, you know, is not quite sure what's ahead of her, what lies ahead?
I think that a couple of things. You are dealing with so much humans, clients, running the business. Right. It's going to be hard for you to explain things to her as they go. So for her to be patient with you also and take notes of things that you want to dive into more. Has set aside, like I'm a huge time blocker. I don't know if Brandon talked about this, and I forced him to start time blocking. But like having a couple of specific times a week where you sit down and talk about things that are questions or you were unsure, like why did you make that decision, instead of explaining it maybe in the moment.
So you mean time blocking for each other?
Time blocking for each other to talk about, like take notes of what was confusing, or you like, why did you make that decision instead of the other? Because from my perspective, I thought you were going to make the other decision. Or why did you say that number? How did you run comps? How did you handle that conversation? It's like negotiating, especially like I loved seeing the insides of negotiating when I started selling real estate with him, and it's easy for him to have phone calls. I'm not going to be there, right? So just picking up, like tying up loose ends from anything that happens that you weren't seeing, but like keeping a list of that and then sitting down and going over them like all at once. So it's not peppering you during stressful days. Bad advice. Is probably bad advice, but it helped me.
It sounds like really good advice.
It helped me because I didn't realize it until I was running our real estate business myself, and just how like stressful things are. And when you're like constantly getting like receiving in from junior agents, I'm like, okay, I've got to do something about this because it's breaking me up too much, but I want to give you the exposure, and I want to sit with you and go through these things. But like keeping a list and time blocking time to go through the list a couple of times a week is like really nice. And just being patient with each other. I think there's like also a list of things I tell people who are entering real estate in general, but then like if you're doing anything in business, the love that you guys have should supersede everything. And I think coming home at night together, whether we've spent the day together or we've been in separate places, and he forces me to do this, and it's so hard, but having like an hour where we don't talk about business. Yeah.
He mentioned that to me. You know, like we went out for lunch not too long ago. Yeah. And I think one thing I really appreciate about my friendship with Brandon, and, you know, it's in a very short amount of time, it feels like we've become really close.
Yeah. We love you.
I love you guys.
I loved you from the first time I met you on a Zoom call. I love this guy. He's a class act. This guy's amazing.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
True.
But, you know, when Brandon and I went out to lunch, we talked about like our marriages. We talked about relationship stuff. Yeah. And he mentioned this to me, that you guys like you try to avoid pillow talk about real estate. Yeah. You know,
it's hard sometimes.
And we talked about how, like, it's so important to create time for like a date night.
Yes, we've been doing this once a week.
It's so important. And like one thing, like my wife and I, we've like really developed a rhythm with it. And even if like there are weeks where we don't want to go out for whatever reason, maybe money's tight or whatever it is, like we'll still like just open a bottle of wine and just like spend time together. That's like phones down, or just watch a show together.
Phones down is a really important part of that.
Yeah. And so it's it's hard. It's definitely hard.
It's really hard, but it's so important. I tell people like the presence of being with somebody with the phone not in their hand is like, it feels like such a big ask these days.
Yeah. Well, Simon Sinek gives an interesting talk.
I love Simon Sinek so much.
I do too. I really love watching his stuff. Sometimes like it's a boost, like an elemental boost up here when you watch it. But like he gives this talk where he talks about how when you're holding a cell phone in your hand while you're talking to someone, it like removes such a large percentage of your power in that conversation. And now I've noticed it. Like sometimes I see real estate agents doing videos where they're holding their phone like while they're touring, and they think it makes them look like this busy, active guy, but it's like you do actually feel it. Like your attention is not fully where it's supposed to be if you're holding your phone in your hand.
Yep. I know. I was doing this like daily posting last year where I would take what Wordle was in the morning and I would kind of intertwine the word.
I still love Wordle.
I still do it.
You still do it every day?
I'm on like, my streak's like 282 days right now. So I'm not quitting until I end my streak.
Wow. It's a good mind game.
Yeah. And I really like connections. But I was doing like posting in the morning, or not in the morning. In the morning I would post from the day before. And I would intertwine Wordle with my day. So when the day was snack, I had like 17 snacks that day at different places. And I would take the phone with me places. But it's true. Like I don't usually have my phone out if I'm out with a buyer. I don't usually film it and put it on Instagram. Lots of people do, and that's okay. I get it. But I was a little bit when I was doing my daily posting, and I felt disconnected from the conversations that were happening. I think that's the time that you spend with people, not just your client, but also other agents, and you're learning about the market. And I love asking agents, like if you go to have a showing with me, I love asking you, like, what are you seeing? Like, what are your thoughts? It's how I really think I like fast forwarded, like learning about real estate was because I asked every single person I encountered questions. And
you did it in a genuine way, not just like, oh, how's it going? How's business?
Yes. Yeah. And I usually, like if it's an agent that brings their client to our listing, I ask them about the other things that they've seen and what they thought about them and what kind of their clients' favorites have been. And it just gives you, I don't know, it's like such a special time to spend with people when you're with them.
It also helps you like kind of calibrate to who you're dealing with, understand like where the client's heart is, because they've seen other things, which means like they have things in mind. There's something brewing in there.
Yes. And the things that you get from them. And then I leaned on that when I was developing relationships with developers and being able to talk to them about not just what I by myself had seen, but just like what I was hearing. And if I hadn't been having those conversations in mass to pick up on what what appears more than anything else, or like even like the one-offs sometimes are like, oh, that's so cool that you think of it that way. And I love asking people about like what they feel drawn to, because I see trends change over time. Yeah. And lately it's like just asking buyers like, oh, do you prefer this over this? And you just see how things have changed. Like people aren't loving the white kitchens. They're not loving the like white lacquer or like whatever it is. Like people want kitchens separated from their living rooms right now. And when you ask questions, you get to see over time trends and things change. And when you ask 10 people on a Sunday and 5 of them have answers that you didn't get a year ago, it's like really deep.
I love
information. It's like irreplaceable. And that's why I share it with my developers too. And they can make decisions based on what's actually going on in the world.
Yeah, I share similar information when it comes to a client considering, like remodeling a home. And it's funny, I love that you brought this up, especially about the kitchen thing. So like when I first entered the business, or like the first few years, like the product that I just loved and adored the most was like that landmark strip of real estate on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
You know, so like in the Upper East Side, to be exact.
Yeah.
So
I figured.
I loved it. I love that product. You know, like I think it's partially because I grew up going to my grandparents' apartment, which was on Fifth Avenue. So like every Sunday being there and like seeing the view of the park. Their home was actually the first home I ever sold. So it's
like the true New York apartments.
Yeah, I mean in a lot of ways, yes. But here's the interesting thing is that majority of those homes have very tiny tucked away kitchens.
Yeah.
And very tiny bathrooms. Because back in the days in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and even the 80s, like kitchens were not important. They weren't important to people. It was just a place where staff would cook.
Yes.
And even only in recent history has like a chef become a celebrity. You know, like chefs were not cool, 15 years ago. They just weren't. And then like similar to the way like Macallan created the whiskey scene in the United States or like really like heightened the whiskey scene, like Gordon Ramsay heightened the chef scene and, like those guys.
And then they started putting the kitchen
in
the
now,
living room.
Now, like everyone, the joke used to be like no one cooks in New York City, but that is not the case anymore. Like, back when they were building 20 Pine Street and they just put microwaves in a wall, like, back then, like nobody was cooking. And sure, maybe like the young finance guys not cooking, but like kitchens have become really, really important to people.
Yeah.
And I find that you're right. Most of the clients that I've worked with don't want an open kitchen in the living room because the minute you sear a steak, all your furniture smells like smoke and oil.
Yeah. So. And I sear steak. I do.
Me too.
Yeah.
A lot.
And it really, the smell issue is actually like really annoying. I'm like, I have to stop doing it in my apartment. Brandon's like, can we start using the grill and the building's like outdoor space? But it's closed for season right now.
Yeah, there are some tricks to like avoiding the smell and the smoke when it comes to. We'll talk about those tricks for sure. But I get what you're saying. You know, in that context, that kitchens not only have become very important, but like the location of the kitchen, that whole thing.
I think that's helping co-op like resurgence because I feel like for a little bit, especially like right after COVID, that like people didn't really want, like the new kids don't want co-ops. They're like, oh, all the rules and all the stuff.
Right.
But they are the homes that offer like charm. A separate kitchen for the most part is really hard to find in
but
a
lot of them are tiny. Like
tiny.
I don't know what's going to happen to 885th and 905th and 910 and all these like these golden age buildings.
The kitchens are too small.
The kitchens, the bathrooms, the closets, like the things that back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like these things were not important. Like people didn't care about having massive closets.
And they probably had a lot of room in their bedroom, like more room.
Right.
In their bedroom.
Yeah. And that was more important.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that the only thing that can happen is they have to develop more leniency with these buildings. Like, like these cash buildings where it's 0% financing and you have to have like 2 to 4 times the purchase price and post-closing liquidity just to even get through the door.
Yeah.
It's like, I think these things really need to change. Or like the wet over dry concept. You can't build wet over dry, but that means you cannot expand bathrooms. You cannot expand kitchens. And like people are going to stop buying real estate on Fifth Avenue.
I mean, this is real. This is like an actual thing because the days on market are so long and they're, I mean, you sell more of them than I do, of course, but like, I wonder, like the people, they take so long to sell the absorbance.
Most of the time it's
so
because
low.
The sellers believe that the home is more valuable than it is. But unfortunately, even though it's the most beautiful views and everything else, and you're on Fifth Avenue, unfortunately, I think that the value of that real estate is progressively going down. And I don't think you can say the same for like a great 3-bedroom on 3rd Avenue.
Yeah,
that's
true.
newer. I think like, and that's like almost sad. That brown sign district on 5th Avenue or Central Park West, like
just like the heritage of New York.
Exactly, and like those co-ops, they're like the gatekeepers.
Everybody should be dying to get into those buildings.
Right. Listen, I'm hopeful that like as there's a more youthful resurgence in those buildings, a youthful entry, these older boards will start being weeded out, and, all the old shareholders will, start dying and moving on.
I know. I mean, it's like, it's real. There's so many buildings in Brooklyn, co-op buildings, that there's so many people who want change, but it's the two people at the head of the board that have lived there forever.
I know.
Not that, not everybody, don't cancel me. Some people that have been the board president for 45 years are amazing, but they're resistant to change, usually, in more ways than not. They're stubborn.
Only recently, 900 Fifth has changed their rule from 0% financing to 50%. And it's like, okay, we're making some progress here.
Yeah. Was it ever because they couldn't, like, funding was difficult, or was it just because they didn't want people with a loan?
Units. Yeah. They weren't selling units. Like, it's not a good look when your days on market is hitting 300 and 400 days.
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to sell 3 bedrooms facing the park for $4 million, and they can't do it.
Which is crazy.
And a big part of that is because not only is the audience limited. Listen, there's plenty of people with lots of money, but like. Yeah.
They want the resale value to be there too, though.
Exactly.
And they know that it's going to be more limited as a resale.
Yeah. I personally think it's more of the physical makeup of the unit that's the challenge. Like, even though the layouts are very formal, like, I like a formal dining room. I like a formal I really like a formal layout. I do very much. But like, you need a wider kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be like a submarine.
I know. We're selling a couple of townhouses right now that have,
oh man,
the kitchens are they're tiny. It's just totally
it's tough.
Different thing.
And then you have some townhouses that have these massive kitchens, and then they also have like the butler pantries, the dumbwaiters. Like, I love that stuff.
Oh, me too. Dumbwaiters. Like, if I get a home with a dumbwaiter,
it feels like a piece of history. It feels like a piece of history. I love that. Townhouses are my favorite product. Yeah. Really, they are. And I genuinely believe that when you buy a townhouse in New York City, it's the best form of real estate investment because you're buying like a piece of the land. Yeah. So
the Brooklyn townhouse market has been
fired up.
Oh my gosh. It's like we didn't used to have sales over 6 million very often, and then now there's something else just listed 15 million, and it's there. It's come. So.
What do you think Ryan's townhouse is worth now?
Oh my gosh.
You've comped it out. Don't lie.
The pressure. $20 million.
Really?
No. Not even close. Not even close. No, I live right by him. So I know the area well. So if he ever wanted to sell, he should call me.
I feel like he would.
I feel like he better.
I feel like he would.
I hope he would. I think he would.
Yeah, although
he can't show his own house.
Yeah, he's not selling it.
No, he's not. I think he actually told me, he was like, I'm gonna live here till I die or something along those lines.
Because look, when you put that much work into something, and like also 3-4 years he put into it, like that's like a long process.
Yeah, I want to do that process though. I want to do that.
You want to do that? You want to build your own house?
Yes.
Like, I'm with you. I want to do the same.
I really do. It's kind of what I'm working toward right now.
A Brooklyn townhouse.
Brooklyn townhouse.
I love that.
Yeah. Brandon thinks we're working toward a penthouse, but he just doesn't know.
Well,
replacing pent with town.
Well, that leads me to my next question. It's just you guys. Just you two.
Just us.
Just you two.
And our cat.
And your cat. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I noticed you and Brandon don't have children.
We do not. And I am approaching closer to 40, so.
Do you think that'll ever change?
I am approaching 40. No, I'm just kidding. So I've always been really honest about it. I love kids, which I think really surprises people to find out that I don't want them, but I love them. I'm an aunt. I'm the best aunt in the whole world, might I add.
Well, it's very clear that you like children.
I love
the fact that you thought about
your girls.
Just giving me something for my children coming it's very clear. So it's curious.
Yeah.
If I may ask.
I know. I think that it confuses people because a lot of people that I know my age that don't have kids don't want them because they don't like them. Not that they don't like them, but they're just like they don't get them. They're like a lot to them. They just like their space. I think that I'm just a couple of things. Dolly Parton said this, and I resonate with this. Dolly Parton said, in looser words, I'm nobody's mama, so I can be everybody's mama. So I feel like I'm channeling if I'm not the mother to a person, I can be the mother to anybody kind of. And I really channel that with my clients. I channel it with my clients' children. I channel it with my agents. And I think I just like right now, I want to be dedicated to that.
Well, you say right now.
I say right now because I never say
have
never.
Have you ever gotten the itch?
I think sometimes, yeah, like sometimes I'll see somebody with a baby, especially, and you think about like being called mom and like if that's like completely absent, am I going to be 80 and really regret it? Absolutely. I think that I would be crazy not to think. Like I think anybody my age, even if you don't want children, I think that you're concerned if I don't have, that means I don't have grandchildren.
Yeah.
That means that life older looks way different than what I think I imagined. But I think Brandon would have kids, or one. I think he would have a kid if I was on board.
A little Bogard.
A little Bogard, yeah. But we're so all in on the business. I say maybe someday we may adopt is like what my like kind of consideration is.
I actually think if you guys had children, your business would go like vertically.
Probably.
Because I mean, like, listen, I'm an Orthodox observant Jew, right? Like we believe that children bring the fortune. They bring the good fortune because like that's what we're supposed to do.
Too.
You know,
I love that ideology.
We believe we're supposed to have children, like be fruitful and multiply. It's written in the text, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, I feel like you guys would get so much fulfillment from it. Not that I'm trying to pressure you.
Right. No. I know. People say that. I think and
you guys would be great parents.
I know me, okay? My whole life would become about said child. Whether it was adopted, came from me, whichever, I know my whole life would change. And I think I've been resistant to my life changing.
So that's really more of a resistance to change.
A resistance to change because what I've built has been so much. Like
you worked hard for it too.
I work so hard. I work from, I'm in my laptop by 6:00 in the morning, and while I try to take an hour break to be with husband around dinner time, I'm usually working until 10 or 11, and that's 6 solid days a week. And then I have a 7th day that I try on Saturdays. I try to be light. Yeah. But I do tie up loose ends, but on my terms on Saturdays. But I know life would look very different, and I'm like, I don't know. It's been so much to build to where we are. It's been blood, sweat, tears. Doesn't even describe it right. So to change that and to change my focus to something else, I think is something my brain can't process.
Well, I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that it's not that you don't like kids.
I love them.
Yeah, it's just more that you don't really feel ready. You know?
And if maybe I feel differently when I'm in my 40s, I don't think that I'm going to be too old to change my mind, especially if I'm adopting. And I think, or surrogate, whatever it is. I think
my mother had my youngest brother in her 40s.
There you go. And so many people are doing it.
Yeah. Never say never.
Never say never. And
You're a strong
definitely
woman.
Never say never.
Yeah.
I never say never. You just don't know. Maybe I feel differently in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think you and Brandon are loaded with wisdom, and you have, great core values that would be tremendous to carry forward into another generation. That's why I asked, genuinely curious.
No, I appreciate it. And I think that it's definitely something I think about. I don't see it in the immediate future, but I think about it. And I definitely still live by the motto that anybody can come to me for the rest of my life to be like that, warmth. And I feel I care immensely about people. And
I know you do. That's very evident.
And I hope that, I'm going to keep spreading it. I feel like if I had a kid, all of my attention and love would be zoned. But it wouldn't change me, of course. But
it wouldn't change you. It would just change your day to day.
It would definitely change my day to day.
Yeah, for sure.
Get a couple of nannies.
People reach out to me for advice on entering real estate all the time. I ask you questions about, husband and wife or entering into partnership together. But there's a few things that I always say. What's like the one piece of advice you find yourself giving to everybody?
That's entering real estate or already in it?
That's interested in entering into real estate. You must get like LinkedIn messages. Yeah, it's like, oh, do you have any space on your team, or are you hiring interns? You know, so
every day.
What's like, yeah, same. So what's like the advice you give to all of them?
So one note I would like to add on this, which is I think important, you don't have to respond to everybody. I had to learn this about a year ago because
that's advice for me to take. Honestly.
It's advice for you to take, probably. Yeah, because I think you're a giver too, and you think that if somebody is going to take time to reach out to me, I'm going to repay them by respecting them back to answer.
Right.
But it became overwhelming for me a year ago, and it was taking away from my agents and growing my team. And I get asked, Brandon too, I would say at least once a day, literally at least once a day, either somebody who's struggling in real estate to meet, mostly from other brokerages, to meet to see if, you know, they can chat about their problems, and also people considering real estate. And then I have the added bonus that I speak at the University of Oklahoma, where I graduated from, and I've made all of these connections.
The outreach.
Yeah. And every time I speak, I'll get like 20 messages on LinkedIn. Like, is there any way you can give me? Because when I'm there, I'm like, I want you all to, my whole message is dreaming bigger. And I grew up on an emu farm, and I'm running like a really, like, you know, doing really well and running the real estate business right now. And when you look at the progression of life and just like not putting ceilings on yourself, and I think some of these kids that I talk to too, they are like wondering, wait, can I do what she did? And they want to talk to me and see, like, is there something different about me that maybe, but it's not like anybody can do anything they want if they really can. I truly believe that. I've learned that over the last, I would say, like 3 years. I realized that anybody can do anything that they want, and there's not some special ingredient. Even when I'm like getting off on a tangent, but even when I entered real estate, I had decided in my mind that these top players in real estate were a level I would never be. Why did I think that? Because I didn't grow up in New York, and I didn't think I had the deep enough connections. I don't know why I thought that, but I placed that ceiling on myself. And now, as I have gone on pitches and been told that the people I beat out, I'm like, wow. I like rose, and I didn't even realize, you know, that I was on this journey to be among these people I thought I could never be among. Which, not saying that we're up there yet, but we're on our way. I feel. Yeah, I feel we're on our way. But yeah, I think that, so to me, time is really, really special now. I have a team of 12 that I'm running. It's a lot. And I have a big client base. I'm the main point of contact for all of our developers. I'm the main point of contact for most of our resale listings. And I go out with buyers still, because I think there's nothing like seeing inventory with a buyer and knowing what's going on in the neighborhood. And I had to cut something. And it was people that are not in my like immediate like life, you know,
the outer mentorship,
the outer So I do the guest speaking, which I love, but I don't open myself up anymore. I did a couple of times, and I just realized I can't do it anymore.
It's good advice for me, honestly. I feel like I open up a little too much, you know, but you know, and this won't be the first. It's easy to do. It is. This won't be the first piece of advice that I'll take from you. Actually, you know, when we did have that very first meeting on Zoom, you know, we were like, I was doing the cohort for that Sell It Like Sirhan program, and you were the guest speaker that day. And the topic that you touched on specifically was commission splits, because it was related to team building. So it was like you were giving advice to the group about commission splits. You shared your typical structure that you have with your team. You screen shared it, and I screenshot it.
Good. That's good.
It's exactly what I did. And by the way, since that time, I have followed that structure with all my team members.
Nice.
Because I saw it and I considered it to be very generous.
I think so.
And in the last partnership I had, my partner didn't agree with being a bit more generous, you know, and I find that was a big reason why most of our team members left. And I am trying to create an environment of sustainability, and I'm trying to be a leader that creates retention and long-term relationships that are built on hospitality and generosity. And like, I always tell this to my team members,
me.
I think we're very much aligned
We are,
here.
yeah.
And like, I always tell my team members, like, it took me 5 years to start making money in real estate.
Yeah.
My goal is to just accelerate that for you,
Yep.
and help it happen for you a little bit
too.
faster.
Yep. It's one of my greatest joys is the wins that our agents get.
Yeah. It's very fulfilling. It's very satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's massively satisfying. Almost as sweet as like getting a big deal yourself, which is still sweet. And I get to celebrate that with my husband, and it's, amazing. But like helping change other people's lives in a way of helping them grow a real estate business and fast forward them through some of like the hardships that I went through and Brandon went through has been, sometimes you're like, oh, if you only knew, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm okay with some of them not knowing. So
yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like the opening yourself up to too many people. Like, I got to stop doing that. Like, I keep accepting meetings, and like I'm good with like I do love like giving someone like a quick 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now what I've been doing lately, because I get these, just like you, I get once a day, I get these types of emails or calls, and it's usually related to some sort of speaking engagement or something I did, or someone saw a piece of content.
Yeah.
So like I've been inviting like these high school kids or these high school graduates to come to 200 Amsterdam. I'll sit down with them for 20 to 30 minutes in one of the units. No, just one at a time.
Got it.
Oh yeah, come to 200 Amsterdam Friday at 11. We'll sit down for 30 minutes in one of the, I'll take them to one of the big apartments.
Yeah.
It'll give them a quick boost of inspiration. I'll give them 30 minutes of advice, and then it's goodbye.
Yeah.
Call me when you get your license. Maybe there'll be something there.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to feel like it's just like, it's a little too much. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm taking every intern under the sun, and I need to like be a little bit more mindful of my time in that context.
And sometimes you just really like the other person, and you really like people in general, and you want to help, but it gets to a point where you can't do it anymore.
Right. And I think
it's taken away from your family.
That's part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast. Like, having open forum conversations like this that are navigated by a few questions, but open forum conversation, like just the idea to add value to people across multiple contexts. So like, of course I speak to real estate people, but I find myself speaking to people from all walks of life. I really love that. And it's just people I want to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Growing a team is
it's tough.
Really tough.
It's tough.
I don't think I realized before I started a team how tough it was going to be, or maybe I just didn't listen to people when they told me that. But I'll tell you too, like when we started building and we started really like coming up, I had to protect the team at all costs, and it also meant kind of like,
what does that look like, protecting the team at all costs?
So it means getting a WeWork across the street and having a protected office, where when we survived 2023, which was the worst real estate market ever.
It was abysmal.
It was really bad. And actually, the vibe in our office, we were commiserating our losses together, but it was positive, and it was focusing on the things that were wins. And we did have wins every month that we could focus on.
Doesn't it feel like 2024 is going to be massive?
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel? It's in the air.
Yeah. So many things that didn't work in 23 are starting to click in 24.
Yeah.
Clients, people, sales.
The pot's coming up to a boil.
Yeah. Like things that didn't get traffic for us last year. Our clients amazingly keep re-signing with us, signing the extensions. And we're like getting traffic on stuff that we have carried over from 23, like lots of traffic lately, especially the last 2 weeks. And it feels really good. Yeah. But I said it was really important to me to insulate. So also worth noting, when Brandon and I were coming up, I knew people were talking negatively about us, especially right when we like got our first new development, and there was like a couple, like you catch wind of murmurs, especially at my old company.
People are always talking shit.
People are always talking shit, and I was really offended by it. I felt like I needed to defend myself. It's
jealousy.
Yes, and they saw you when you were smaller, and they want you to still be smaller, and they think if their words are disseminated about you, it makes you smaller to other people.
And another part of it is that, all of us as real estate agent, and this is another thing we can relate with because we're both content driven.
Yeah.
Like you guys have made content your everything. That's always been my everything as well. So we all in the content sphere, and whether it's in reality TV or just in the content we put out on the net, we're all really good at making this look easy.
Yeah.
And making it look fun and glamorous and sexy and cool, but
it's not.
Right. It's not. And most of us don't really like go deep into like the hardship. So it's like people are jealous of what we're doing and what we're up to, but they don't really understand what we fucking put in to get there.
Yeah.
Like it's brutal. And like for me, for example, like I have a family to support.
Yeah.
Like my wife is home taking care of our children. Mm-hmm. So like I'm carrying us. And in New York City, like people my age, we don't live in New York City. We all just survive here.
Yeah.
So, people don't get what, like, even though, thank God, like my career is very successful, like people don't understand what that really looks like on the back end.
Yeah. I know. The expenses, like somebody said, an agent on my team who's no longer on my team said something one time about, you just get this money from my deal. And I was like, oh my God. Oh, Lord help me.
People don't get it.
No,
like,
they
what's
don't get
wrong
it.
with you? Like all this time that you probably spent mentoring and showing them how to do something. It's like, you're getting all this money off my deal. Like,
and mind you, it was not very much money at all. But yeah, and when you decide to help grow other people, you reel back on what you take yourself and you give opportunities to people that you could. I mean, we give opportunities all the time that I could keep. I wouldn't mind keeping.
You have to keep your team well fed.
You have to keep your team well fed and you have to make them excited. And I like to get everybody working with, like, if they can, a higher price point, a nice listing that I know is going to sell, like all the things that provide for momentum and forward motion. And it's like getting to the point where you even win one listing. I'm like, people are like, oh, I can go into real estate. I can sell 4 apartments a year and I'll make $100,000 and everything's fine. And I'm like, how are you going to sell 1 apartment a year? Yeah. Who's going to hire you to sell 1 apartment a year? You've never sold an apartment. Okay. So you find up getting 1 person. Now you have to fucking sell it. By the way, it's so complicated. And for every pitch that you win, that you get to meet with somebody in person, and the number of times you lost the pitch, and everything that it teaches you, but there's so many steps to get to a point where you win a pitch. Yes. Where you win 1 listing. Yeah. And so many losses and so much learning and so much like, okay, I didn't do this as well because I didn't answer this question confidently when we were being interviewed, and next time I'm going to go do some research and I'm going to figure out what the intricacies are of this, and then I'm going to know next time. Yeah. And now a big thing we offer to our agents is going on pitches with them. So they're getting a wealth of experience to accompany them to. Yeah, it's a support system too. It's a support system.
And again, it really just accelerates the success of the new agent. Like the answer to what you just said, like you're getting a piece of my deal. Like, why don't you go back in time and try to do this whole thing by yourself? Yes. Let's see how that turns out with no experience. Yeah. So,
But we make sure not to have people that feel like that are not on our team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got to get rid of that energy. It's toxic.
Toxicity is like, I use the analogy like you have a load of white laundry and one little red sock, and the way it infiltrates everything.
Yeah, and it's like it's very similar in like the hospitality business. Like when you have a beautiful restaurant, like that pre-meal that the chef does with staff, that moment to come together, like you really want to feel like you're working collaboratively as a team. So like I'm trying to grow my team.
Do you do Tom Ferry?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
No.
My coach uses restaurant analogies a lot, and so I was just wondering. But
well, I'm obsessed with the hospitality business. Yeah. Like I would love, like my dream is to like build a hotel or like, create a hotel under like my brand or, the way I develop it, with a restaurant that I can like create the menu for. Like I'm obsessed with that world, really am. So I use those analogies a lot.
Yeah.
Like and I recommended this book to Brandon, Unreasonable Hospitality.
Yes, it's in our living room.
That's like that was like the read of 2023 for me. Like my favorite read.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's on my list.
It's like the Bible for hospitality. I highly recommend it. You know, also Setting the Table.
And he told every agent on our team to read it too.
Yeah. So in my team agreement, I have Will Gadara, the author of Unreasonable Hospitality. I have his TED Talk linked in my team agreement, and I write in it like, you are required to watch this before you commence.
Love
that. And it's just like, it gives them an understand. Like for me, hospitality is very important.
So
and I tell my team members all the time, I don't care if you have 3 jobs and you're doing 10 things at once. Like, as long as the client experience is not compromised, I'm good. Like, I just, we're in the business of helping people feel seen and heard and understood. It's a very emotional process. And, we can take like a very aggressive sales approach to what we do, but that will break the retention that we have with that client. Like we want the client to always want to come back to us. And it's not just about selling the home at top dollar. Yeah. It's about doing it, in accordance to whatever's going on in their life, calibrating to that moment in time in their lives.
Yeah. I think too, when you think about how many real estate agents are in New York City, and to know that somebody's working with you is an honor, and it should be considered that way.
Absolutely. I only have 2 more questions for you, and then I'll have you out of here.
Okay.
I asked this question of everybody.
Okay.
What is the biggest mistake you've ever made? Everyone's reaction is the same.
Thinking,
or like Brandon's reaction was, do you have all night?
I know. Oh, we definitely, I make a lot of mistakes, but I've love learning from mistakes.
Yeah.
And I love supporting other people through their mistakes too, because I'm like, what did Brandon say?
He said, if I remember correctly, it was like taking on too much, like at a certain moment in time. It wasn't a very thrilling answer.
No, that's not very thrilling. I think
if nothing comes to mind, don't worry about it, and I'll cut this.
Well, I'll say this. We've been fired by a couple of clients over the last 2 years, and even though in the moment, and really honestly, we just closed something very recently that the client's not happy. And it's when we were going through it, we were doing I was like, I'm doing everything I can in the moment. But when you get to the end of it, I think you're like, I guess I should have done better at the very beginning, setting expectations.
Yeah. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Hindsight's always 20/20. I think though, I never want somebody to be upset or feel unhappy after a closing. But we recently got fired from a client who was he was a tough client. Sometimes you communicate with people and then the next day they're like, why haven't you called me today? And it's like, we talked for 30 minutes yesterday, and there's nothing that's going to be enough for them.
Yeah.
But I still blame myself. So I think when I look back on the 2 specific clients who have said, I don't want you to sell my apartment anymore, and then the one person that recently closed that was unhappy, my mistakes tend to probably fall into those little buckets. But in general too, I would say if I was to change anything about my journey, and I don't regret because everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
I probably would have focused on I wish I would have focused on my business a little bit harder, a little bit sooner. And part of that for us was not that I don't mind alcohol at all. People drink around me and don't mind it at all. But for us, I think it was really important to cut it out.
Yeah.
And so maybe not mistake, but regret looking backward is I wish we would have sooner than we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
It's real. That's true. I mean, those are the things that come to my head first.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest mistake I made in my career was going at it solo for the first several years. That's why I want to be a great team leader, because I feel like I would have accelerated my success if I put myself in the right place sooner.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about alcohol. I think that when we cut it out is when we got really serious, and it's also when we came over to Sirhant.
Yes.
And I think that I just am like, if we would have done that a couple of years earlier, I think it would have
been on the moon.
accelerated. Yeah. Like we would have had the year we're having right now, maybe 2 years ago. Like who knows what, like exactly how it plays out, but it was just a mind shift that happened all around the same time. And alcohol wasn't serving us anymore, and so we just like have been better people removing it.
That's great.
So that's real life, ladies and gentlemen. And
yes. My last question for you.
Yes.
What's next for the Bogards?
The Bogards have recently grown to 12 human beings. So we have a really hefty goal this year, and we're going to do everything we can to achieve it. But
what's that goal?
It's 250 million.
Great. So what we're going to do is 1 year from now, you're going to come back for a part 2.
I love accountability partners.
Yeah, and you're going to tell me how
if we
it was.
hit it or not.
No, you're going to hit it.
Okay.
You know?
That's good. That's good.
Now, the way you guys are going, I have no doubt you're going to hit that goal.
Thanks.
There
was a game plan to get to that number that included real things. It's not just like threw a dart at the wall, because if you look at last year and this year, you're like, whoa, you're going to do 2.5 times. But there was a game plan to get there.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Well, you guys have each other. And
we do.
You're the most
so
powerful
lucky.
couple in New York.
We're so lucky.
And I say that a lot.
About everybody else.
Just about you.
Oh,
about
that's
you
really
guys.
Sweet. Thank you.
Ask Brandon. I tell him all the time. I comment on all your stuff. Most powerful couple in New York.
Everything that we've been doing, we'd want to do it like more and bigger, and keep our integrity. I think people that don't know us, they don't know how really down to earth and how important that culture is to our team. And I just hope that we continue to amplify.
I think that the way you're going to get there is by just keeping it about each other.
Yeah.
Keeping it about this partnership that you guys have.
It's our special sauce.
It really is. It's your special sauce. What you guys have is amazing.
Thank you.
I think it's really an inspiration for couples everywhere, regardless of whether it's business or not. So the fact that you guys have each other is what's going to propel you to that level and even higher. So keep making it about each other.
You
guys are the best.
That's really great advice. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
You.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. How fun.
That was good. That was great.
Thank you. Solid conversation.